Once in a great while, something compels a man to break past his natural limitations, spurring him forward with no thought of caution, no time for hesitation, creating a catalyst to achieve the impossible, and in so doing, immortalizing his name and deeds in the annals of history. On February 11th, 1990, the world would witness one of the most incredible upsets in sports. In front of 40,000 fans and under the bright lights of the Tokyo Dome, the land of the rising sun would host the sunset of Mike Tyson's terrifying title reign when he faced James "Buster" Douglas. Up to this point, the 23-year-old Mike Tyson had ripped through the heavyweight division like an ancient world marauder. At 37-0, Tyson had captured every heavyweight crown, including the lineal title, and he had done so with a violent swiftness. Tyson often knocked out his opponents in 1 to 2 rounds, having the lowest average rounds of any heavyweight champion. He also had the second highest knockout percentage, only sitting behind Big George Foreman. The public at large no longer questioned whether or not he would win, but how fast and with what punch. So much so, many refused to buy his fights, because why would you pay that much money to watch 1 minute of action? The #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world was without reproach, and without real challenges. And though he had a looming date with future champion Evander Holyfield for a history-making multi-million-dollar purse, in the meantime, Tyson's camp decided he should have a tune-up fight in Japan. The man they selected for slaughter was the Ring Magazine #7 heavyweight contender, James "Buster" Douglas. Tyson did not take him seriously, barely training at all. He traded in his road work for drinks, women, substances, more women, and more substances. His sparring sessions were described as sluggish, and he was even dropped during a media workout mere weeks before the fight. Thrown into this whirling mesh of chaos was also divorce and a split from his manager Bill Clayton and head trainer Kevin Rooney. Even so, Tyson was such a favorite that only a few select sports books would take bets on the fight. Even with odds at a ludicrous 42 to 1, only a few would dare take that bet. But there was at least one person from Columbus, Ohio that was sure Buster Douglas would become the world champion, and that was Douglas himself. After a failed championship effort in 1987, many questioned Douglas's heart and determination. Now with 6 successful attempts against good opposition, he was once again ranked inside the top 5, and even if this shot against Tyson was unexpected, Douglas was determined to make it count, knowing that this would likely be his last chance to capture championship glory. In total contrast to Tyson, Douglas dedicated himself to a grueling 9-week training camp. Unlike other opponents, Douglas and his camp were absolutely confident they had what it took to unseat the seemingly invincible Iron Mike. But then, with just under a month before the big day, Douglas's mother, his biggest supporter, passed away at the age of 47. Although many urged Douglas to pull out of the fight, he wouldn't do it because he told his mother he would win the belt, and he was going to keep that promise. He was no longer just doing this for his sport, he was doing it for Mom. Tyson had not been paying enough attention to the fight to even know that Douglas's mother had passed. But according to him, the kind of person he was back then probably would have told Douglas he was about to join his mother. The young champion was about to learn a hard lesson, one of many more to come that would eventually compel him to walk a different path. And when the two warriors finally made their walk under the polite crowd in the Tokyo Dome, no one suspected they were about to see a knockout that would send shockwaves throughout the world. The first 2 rounds did not, in fact, produce the spectacular knockout many expected from Tyson. Douglas immediately proved himself to be anything but what Tyson, his team, or the world expected. Mike was supposed to chase his fleeing foe like a hound pursuing a fox, until his jaws inevitably snapped shut around their neck. But Douglas did not seem the least bit intimidated.
Another right-hand lead lands for Douglas.
And what's happened, Douglas started to get his punches off first, which is the key to boxing.
Usually, when Tyson ducked in and shot forward with his jab to set up a power punch, this is when most opponents would try to escape by pivoting inside, and in turn get crushed by Tyson's gazelle hook. A typical non-peekaboo boxer would pivot with their opponent to stay lined up, but since Tyson was a switch hitter, he could simply turn to follow his opponents, even landing his hook for more of a southpaw position. But even at the very start of the fight, Douglas defied expectations. He stood his ground and drew Tyson in with the collar tie, controlling his head and left arm to circle the opposite way, to the outside. Douglas repeated this feat several times over the first couple rounds. The crowd in utter disbelief that he was evading Tyson's best attacks. Even commentator Larry Merchant remarked that the first round was the finest boxing of Douglas's entire career. He was calmly pulling off insane tactics, circling towards Tyson's hooks, which was usually like running on foot into incoming traffic. Douglas got away with this by controlling Tyson's head to steer him off balance, disrupting his shots before he could align his punch. And when Tyson did manage to actually corner Douglas, Buster effectively fought back, firing short, tight punches in furious bursts while shifting angles, never giving the power puncher a chance to set. By the time Tyson had locked in, Douglas was already gone. Iron Mike did find the mark with the big left at the end of the first, stepping back into the southpaw to wing a huge left overhand. But the success was short-lived. Far from intimidated, Douglas more than paid him back in the second with extended combinations. Giving Tyson a taste of his own medicine, Douglas circled off angle and sailed uppercuts through his guard. An antidote against Tyson's deadly peekaboo head movement. For Douglas's camp, everything was going according to plan. To everyone else in the world, these first two rounds were inconceivable. And this shocking spectacle would continue past the halfway point of the fight. The majority of Douglas's success came from his consistency and brilliant tactics. In other words, what he was doing right. Douglas fought a brilliant fight, setting the blueprint for how to beat Tyson.
You step to his right, give him a little angle.
His evasive techniques weren't just defense. They created a sort of positive feedback loop into offense. Instead of retracting his jab, he let it hang on Tyson's head as a frame, using it to step off angle and line up blistering rights. He had the same idea for his hooks, circling inside to his left. Rather than constantly retreat, he would stay put and smother Tyson's attacks, using an elbow frame to halt Tyson's head movement and keep him in place before nailing him with punches. Buster supplemented this with quick, snappy jabs, leading crosses, and numerous uppercuts to help him outland and outpoint Tyson.
Douglas again with a left and a right, and now Tyson lands a right hand and backs Buster up, but here he comes.
The micro is punching.
All this being said, and without taking away any credit from Douglas, part of this came down to what Tyson was doing wrong, or rather how he was not employing his usual tools that had captured him as championships in the first place. In the past, Tyson had set up his shots with 2 or 3 offbeat feints and head movement preparations. He was meticulous about this before exchanges and even after exiting them, just in case his opponents had follow-up punches. But with Douglas, he tended to move only once or twice at the most, with the same rhythm each time, making it easier and easier for Douglas to catch him. Generally, head movement works because the opponent can't predict where you're headed, but if they get a read on your movement, it's almost worse than just staying still, because they can target the openings created in your guard. Tyson would slip left in the hopes of setting up a monster lead hook, and Douglas would meet him there, slamming a lead left or rear uppercut, punishing Tyson's supposedly defensive movement. Or Tyson might duck right to unleash an overhand, but instead get halted by Douglas's cross. Soon, Tyson became easy to read and easy to pick apart. His performance was clearly disappointing Holyfield, who was watching his $11 million guarantee slip away as Tyson got outboxed by a wolf disguised as an underdog. But finally, in the 6th, Tyson showed some life, incorporating gut-wrenching bodywork to better disguise his other attacks. He became less predictable, finding success against Douglas's elbow frame by firing uppercuts underneath of them.
And another right-hand uppercut by Tyson.
It wasn't enough, but it was something, some kind of momentum, allowing Tyson to claw his way back into a fight that hadn't even been competitive up to this point. This all came to a head in the 8th. Tyson's offense was starting to heat up, but Douglas had had more than enough success to be comfortable standing in the fire. He stuck Tyson in place with his jab frame, let him loose to time his head movement, and found Tyson's chin twice, sending him bouncing to the ropes. But just as Buster seemed to be truly dominating the champion on his way to a TKO, he got a little overconfident. Once more, Tyson's rear uppercut stabbed through Douglas's elbow frame. Lifting the overzealous challenger before he crumbled to the canvas. The world held its breath. Would Douglas, so close to victory, fall short at the very end? Through sheer will and determination, Douglas made the count. This would become its own controversy, with many feeling that Douglas got a long count, possibly as long as 14 seconds. Regardless, Douglas was on his feet, and the round soon came to a close. Many must have felt that this had all been a fluke that was now over, but those people did not know Buster Douglas. Tyson rushed out, trying to pick up where he left off, hoping Douglas was still buzzed from the previous shots. But Tyson's lack of defensive responsibility plagued him here, yet again. Even though Tyson connected, he didn't follow through with a responsible exit plan. Douglas unloaded with retribution.
Misses. Douglas comes back with a left and a right.
But then Tyson came back, crossing his right over Douglas's jab.
Solid right cross. Douglas wobbled again.
Douglas was prepared for this the next time, and he punished Tyson's inaction again after a clinch break. Following up to stick Tyson to the ropes.
Shades of Ray Leonard against Tommy Hearns. Douglas coming back with a left and right. Tyson is wobbling. Tyson needs the ropes.
But Tyson knew the uppercut worked at this point. He landed 2 huge ones, gaining enough respect from Douglas to back him off. But although Tyson was respected, he was not feared. Douglas was not being reckless, but he was still throwing, with championship aspirations. Tyson was so gone, he couldn't feel the punches. He could only hear the impact, as if it was happening to someone else. Mike had started the round looking for a knockout. He ended it on the verge of being knocked out, lucky to hear the bell. Tyson landed a hard right in the first few seconds. However, that would be the best work he did for this round. Douglas stayed the course, his disciplined preparation paying off, his focused game plan nullifying Tyson's chaotic efforts. He punished Tyson's now predictable head movement, until Tyson stopped completely. Shambling forward like a broken juggernaut run out of steam, the great champion was beaten and battered until Douglas finally uncorked a tremendous rear uppercut, whipping Tyson's head clear around. Douglas followed with an iconic 4-punch sequence, every shot pushing Tyson back. He seemed to topple in slow motion. It was all too easy for Douglas to speed up the process.
Oh, the uppercut.
What an uppercut by Douglas, and down goes Tyson.
It's over. It's over.
Mike Tyson has been knocked out.
The once invincible picture of pure domination was now a former champion. James Buster Douglas was the new, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Douglas, fueled by the love of his mother and the promise he refused to break, shocked the world, unleashing a version of himself that was never quite recaptured. Tokyo Douglas still stands as a near mythical combat sports figure, not because he was consistently great, but because he was great when it most mattered. Douglas serves as a reminder that even when the world has its doubts, it's the people closest to us It's their love, support, and belief that can help us become something bigger than ourselves to capture an iconic moment in time. If you'd like to learn more about how to fight like Tyson or how to beat people like Tyson, check out any of my books, linked below. And if you want a good story, check out our comic book, Mortal Weapons. From the Modern Martial Artist, this has been David Christian, wishing you happy training.